Welcome to this deep dive into a story that's both heartbreaking and incredibly inspiring. You came to us wanting to explore trauma and resilience. And for that, there's no better guide than Dr. Edith Eger and her memoir, The Choice.
What's fascinating about Dr. Eger is that she's not just a Holocaust survivor, she's a world-renowned psychologist. So her book isn't just about what happened during the Holocaust, it's about the psychological and emotional impact of those experiences, both on herself and others.
Exactly. She's someone who went through the unimaginable and then dedicated her life to helping others find freedom from their own internal prisons. But before we get into her incredible work as a therapist, let's start at the beginning.
Yes. Let's rewind to Eger's childhood in Hungary. She describes a loving but complex family dynamic where even small moments could have a lasting impact.
There's this one detail that really stuck with me. Eger was only 7 years old when her parents jokingly said, "We could have saved that one," referring to how they already had 2 daughters. Seems like a throwaway comment.
Right.
But for Eger, it planted a seed of self-doubt that she carried with her.
It's remarkable how these seemingly insignificant moments, especially in childhood, can shape our sense of self-worth. It's like Eger says, these early experiences can become part of the foundation of our inner prisons.
It makes you wonder, what are some of those foundational moments that have shaped our own lives? But of course, for Eger, these early experiences were just a prelude to the devastation of the Holocaust.
Right, and as you can imagine, those experiences are incredibly difficult to read about. The forced wearing of the yellow star, the constant fear, and the separation from loved ones. It's hard to even fathom the emotional toll it must have taken.
One passage that really struck me was Eger's description of her mother's reaction upon seeing her at her grandparents' house. Eger writes, "It was as though the very fact of my existence had taken her by surprise." It's such a heartbreaking image. And it speaks volumes about the complex relationship between mothers and daughters, particularly in the face of trauma.
It's like her mother couldn't reconcile the joy of seeing her daughter with the overwhelming fear and uncertainty of their situation.
Absolutely. And amidst all of this, Eger found solace in dance. Can you imagine? Even in Auschwitz, she clung to the beauty of movement, even imagining her parents meeting as a joyous ballet.
This highlights the incredible power of imagination as a coping mechanism during trauma. For Eger, it was a way to access a world of beauty and joy that had been ripped away from her.
It reminds me of Viktor Frankl's work on finding meaning in suffering. Even in the darkest of times, humans have this remarkable ability to find glimmers of hope and beauty.
And for Eger, it wasn't just her imagination, it was her resourcefulness that helped her survive.
Right. We have to talk about the carrots in the dress story. This wasn't just about survival instincts. It was about a mental shift.
Absolutely. She adopted this mantra, if I survive today, tomorrow, I will be free. This idea, born out of desperation, became the foundation for her resilience, not just during the Holocaust, but throughout her life.
I think that's such a powerful takeaway for anyone facing challenges, big or small, to focus on getting through today with the hope of a brighter tomorrow. But even with that hope, Eger talks about the immense guilt and responsibility she felt as a survivor.
This is incredibly common among survivors of trauma, often referred to as survivor's guilt. It's this overwhelming question of, why me? Why did I survive when so many others didn't?
It's this heavy weight that I can't imagine carrying. But Eger, she never shied away from these difficult emotions. She really did.
Yeah.
And that strength, it's inspiring, how she faced rebuilding her life after the war.
Yeah, it really shows you freedom from the camps. It didn't erase the scars of the trauma, It continued to impact her life, even as she found love, started a family, built a new life.
She writes about marrying Bella, another orphan, and she says, "We marry our unfinished business. For Bella and me, our unfinished business is grief." Wow, that line, it really got to me. It speaks to how deeply trauma can shape our choices, even in love.
For sure. And the generational impact of trauma, too. Both Eger and Bella carrying the weight of their pasts, and how those experiences inevitably shape their relationship.
It's like you can't outrun your past.
Right.
And speaking of trying to outrun the past, Eger and Bella, they eventually make this difficult decision to flee communism and immigrate to America. You'd think that would be the ultimate liberation. But Eger describes it as almost entering a new kind of prison. Have you ever felt that? Even in positive change, that there can be these unexpected challenges.
Oh, absolutely. The challenges of adapting to a new culture, a new language, a whole new way of life. It can be incredibly overwhelming, especially when you're already carrying the weight of past trauma, It's a good reminder that healing, it isn't a linear journey. It's full of twists and turns, unexpected setbacks, breakthroughs.
Eger describes this moment that really illustrates this. She's on a bus in Baltimore, and the driver yells, "Pay or get off." And suddenly, she's flooded with memories of the camps, the fear, The helplessness is just this stark reminder of how easily past trauma can resurface, even in these ordinary everyday situations.
Yeah, that one really resonated with me too. It shows how our nervous systems, they hold on to these traumatic experiences, and sometimes even the most harmless triggers can bring those feelings rushing back.
Makes me think about the experiences of immigrants today, too. Leaving behind everything familiar, navigating new cultural norms, facing potential prejudice. It's a lot.
It is a lot to process. For sure, Eger's story really highlights those universal challenges of acculturation, the resilience that it takes to rebuild your life in a new land. And for Eger, those challenges ultimately led her to a turning point, her decision to pursue psychology.
It's fascinating to me how that decision came about. Her desire to help her son, who was struggling with his own challenges. She wanted to understand the why behind people's choices,
Yeah.
the hidden motivations that drive our behavior.
Right. And you see how her lived experience with trauma, that becomes the foundation of her work as a psychologist. It allowed her to connect with patients on this deeper level, to understand their pain and struggles with an empathy that comes from having walked a similar path.
It's powerful to turn her pain into a source of healing for others. And that's where we see Eger's brilliance as a therapist. She really dove into the theory too, didn't she?
She did. She immersed herself in the work of some of the greats, Viktor Frankl, Carl Rogers, Albert Ellis.
It's like she took inspiration from everywhere.
She did, but ultimately came up with her own unique approach to therapy.
And there are a few principles that really stand out in her work, like the importance of unconditional self-acceptance. That's something she talks about a lot.
She does. She firmly believed that real healing, it begins with accepting ourselves, even the parts we don't like, the mistakes we've made. Think about that for a second. What would it look like to offer that same compassion and understanding you give so freely to others, to yourself?
It's a powerful question. It really is. And it makes me think about another one of Eger's principles, allowing ourselves to really feel our emotions, even the painful ones.
Yeah, that's huge.
It is.
And it's something so many people struggle with, trying to suppress those difficult emotions. But Eger argues that it only makes them fester and grow stronger.
She talks about one patient, Jason, who would go into a catatonic state whenever he felt overwhelmed.
Right. Jason had learned to shut down all his emotions as a way of coping with trauma. But in the long run, it was causing him more suffering.
It's like running from your problems.
Yeah.
It never works.
It doesn't. And Eger, she helped him find healthier ways to express those feelings, to release them in a safe and constructive way.
So it's not about just being negative all the time.
Not at all. Eger's very clear about that.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging the emotion, processing it, and then choosing how you want to move forward. It's about the element of choice.
Choosing how we respond. That's a big theme in her work.
Definitely. It's like she's saying, yes, terrible things may have happened to you, but you are not defined by your past. You have the power to choose how you show up in the present moment.
So powerful.
Yeah.
And one of those powerful choices Eger talks about is forgiveness.
Which can be a very loaded word, I think.
It is. When I hear forgiveness, I immediately think of the person who hurt me. But Eger's perspective on forgiveness, it's different.
It is. It's not about saying what happened was okay or condoning the actions of the person who hurt you. It's about freeing yourself from the chains of the past, recognizing that holding on to anger and resentment, it only hurts you in the end.
She tells this really moving story about Beatrice, a woman who was abused as a child, and Beatrice's journey to forgive her abuser. It's incredibly powerful, really highlights the potential for healing, even in the face of such deep trauma.
And it's important to remember that forgiveness, it isn't always possible or even desirable. It's a deeply personal choice and a process that looks different for everyone.
And sometimes the hardest person to forgive is ourselves.
It's true. We can be our own harshest critics. But Eger's message is so clear. Self-forgiveness is crucial. It's a crucial step in healing and finding freedom from the past. Remember when she says, I can't ever change the past, but there is a life I can save. It is mine.
So good. Such a powerful reminder that we always have a choice. We can see trapped in the prison of our past,
Yeah.
or we can step into the freedom of the present moments.
And that choice, it can feel daunting, I know, especially when you're dealing with trauma and pain. But you don't have to do it all at once. Remember, healing, it's a process. It's a journey of small steps, just one day at a time.
So if you're listening to this and you're resonating with Dr. Eger's story, ask yourself, what's one small step you could take today to choose freedom in your own life? Maybe it's practicing more self-compassion, allowing yourself to feel your emotions, or just extending a little grace to yourself, whatever it looks like for you. You don't have to do it alone. There are resources out there, people who care, and stories like Dr. Eger's, to remind you that healing and freedom are always possible.